Hi, I'm Cynthia Corsetti, Executive Coach and Career Transition Expert. And you are smack in the middle of the Job Search Boot Camp. And this is a course that I had created earlier for my clients, but I've decided to put it all out here on YouTube for you. So if you have not watched the earlier videos, I encourage you to go back to the beginning of this course and watch them all. It'll all make more sense. In today's video, we're going to kind of flip things around and we're going to talk about the employer side of things. We're going to talk about the different interview formats and why the interviewers choose one format over another. I'll be sharing with you exactly what the employer is looking for. I'm going to tell you why they ask the questions that they do and why they do it the way they do. It's all meant to help you be as prepared as possible for your next interview. As always, if you find value in what I'm offering here, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Let's do this. Are you planning to use a job board to post your resume? If you are, I'd like to share something with you that you just might find interesting. Only 14.9% of jobs are filled through job boards. Yep, 39.9% are filled through employee referrals. In fact, when you add that to the fact that only 2% of applicants are ever even called for an interview, well, it proves that if you're fortunate enough to land an interview, you want to make it count. In fact, you need to make it count. That's why today we're going to geek out a little on interview formats. Here's what we're going to cover today in this training. 1, identify different types of interviews. And 2, break down the behavior-based interview process. When you finish this video, you'll understand various styles of interviews, so you'll know exactly what to expect when you enter the room, and you'll understand the framework of one of the most popular formats, all to help you make your interview count. With that said, let's get this show on the road. I know you have a lot riding on your interview, and your needs truly do matter and they're important. But to understand the interview process entirely, today we're going to focus on the employer's needs. It'll help you understand why you're being asked certain questions and why they need to know. In the last video, we mentioned some specific things that employers need to learn about you in an interview, right? We talked about the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities. We talked about whether or not you're going to fit into the culture of the organization, if you can hit the ground running and not need a lot of ramp-up time. And we talked about if you're actually a good investment for the company, and they're all important. But let's talk about why these things are so important. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the price of a bad hire is about 30% of the employee's first-year earnings. So if I'm hiring a candidate at $120,000 a year and I make a bad hire, that cost me around $36,000. For a small business, hiring the wrong person could be a real threat to the business. And for larger companies who hire even more people, bad hires impact their bottom line in a huge way. In fact, some HR executives are evaluated on their attrition rates in their organizations. Hiring the right candidate matters as much to the employer as finding the right job matters to you. Hiring is a big deal, and doing it well is a priority. And it's not a simple process. The reality is that studies show that up to 58% of resumes are embellished. So what's an employer to do? The interview becomes so important. The employer needs to use the interview time to discover those things that we mentioned above about the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities, but they also have to find out more beyond the obvious. Things like, will you call off a lot? Will you be a litigation risk? Will you cause friction among the staff, or will you be a person who pulls staff together? They'll want to determine if you're a team player and if you're willing to go above and beyond. And the interview is the primary tool they use to do it. There are several types of interviews. Structured, where the interview remains in control and it's very, very formal. Unstructured, where an interviewer might just ask you to tell you your story with no real guidance. Stress interviews, usually reserved for positions that are going to involve a lot of stress. Although people claim that all interviews are stress interviews. There's also problem-solving or case interviews. That's where employers are trying to dig deep into a candidate's analytical skills. These can be popular in the financial world. And behavior interviews, which is what we're going to unpack in this training. With so many types of interviews, you might be wondering why I've chosen to focus on the behavior-based interviews. Well, for one thing, they're the most popular. But more importantly, if you're prepared to handle a behavior-based interview, you'll be prepared for any type of interview that you walk into. So let's take a look at behavior interviews. This type of interview relies on one underlying principle, that the best indicator of a person's future performance is their past performance. In other words, if a candidate was a poor performer in past positions, they're very likely to be a poor performer in future positions. It's important for the interviewer to dig deep and sort out the circumstances. Was the performance a reflection of the individual or the circumstances the individual found themselves in? And a good interviewer will dig, which can work to your advantage. Every behavior interview is designed to discover your past behaviors, attitudes, performance, and interaction. In addition, it's designed to pull out how much of those behaviors were a part of your character and skill level as opposed to the organizational culture that you were working in. Behavior interviews all follow the same format, which is broken down into 3 parts. Part 1, situation or task. Part 2, action. Part 3, result. Let's take a look at each. Part 1, the situation. This is a circumstance, a task you were assigned, a project that you had to complete, a problem you had to solve. You'll be expected to describe the situation in a story format, allowing the interviewer to walk on this journey with you. Part 2, the action. This means what steps did you take to resolve the situation? Specifically, which steps, in what order, why those steps, and who else did you involve? You'll want a list of actual steps that you took in the situation and an explanation of why you chose those steps. Everything in your answer should be specific. Step 3, the result. What was the outcome of your actions? Did something change? Did you make an impact? Is it quantifiable? And remember, not all outcomes have to have been positive. You could have had an epic fail. I mean, we all have, right? You can use that as your example, as long as it turns out that that epic fail turned into an epic learning experience for you. A skilled interviewer will ask follow-up questions and similar questions to squeeze out any possible embellishments or inaccuracies. So it's important to be straightforward with your interviewers. They have ways of getting to the truth. Some other things that set a behavioral interview apart are they will never include hypothetical questions like, what would you do if, or how would you handle X? And they will not ask you yes or no questions. Every question will require your answer to have all 3 parts. I know it sounds intimidating, but in the next video, we're going to zero in on exactly how to answer behavior questions. And I'll give you examples from real interviews. Let's end here with a quick review. We've identified several different types of interviews, and we've broken down the behavior-based interview process. So now you can understand that format completely. In the member area, you'll find a downloadable PDF that illustrates behavior-based process. Great job today, and I'll see you in the next video.